My family's shop was on fire. No insurance. Everything my dad had was about to burn. And the people who showed up with shovels, they were not our friends. They were people from a church that we barely even visited. And that moment didn't just save a building. It rewired everything I believe about what the church is supposed to be. I fell in love with the church long before I ever knew who Jesus was. Growing up in Southwest Missouri, church felt like some sort of like cultural obligation, well, at least for most families. I don't know if it ever really felt like much of an obligation for mine. I hear it's something you're supposed to do, like voting for Reagan or watching the Chiefs go 2-14. It was the 80s. My parents, they resisted, at least the church part. Pretty sure they voted for Reagan. I remember it was one afternoon that my dad woke me up on a Sunday, our whole family, and said, "Hey guys, we're going to church." You got to understand, like that's just not something we did as a family. We never went to church. But one Sunday, he put us all in a station wagon and says, "We're going to church." So we pull up into this rural church, this gravel parking lot. We're in the station wagon. It's me, my mom, my dad. I got a brother that's 6 and another brother that's 9 years older than me. Like, they're like teenagers, and like, what are we doing here? We get the car, we're sitting there, and we're in this gravel parking lot. My dad's like, "What are we doing?" So he starts the car back up, puts it in reverse, we leave. He goes, "We're late." So we left. We came back another week, not too long later. And this time we show up in the parking lot, and my dad's like, "We're not dressed for this." And so we backed out of the parking lot. It's like family lore. We don't know if it was 3 or 4 times. We kind of argue about it. I think it was 4 times that we showed up in this parking lot, and we literally backed out and left. Like, it was crazy. But one Sunday, my dad reached for the door handle, and we got out. And I still remember walking into this church. It was just a little bitty country church, man. And we walked in the door. They had like some greeter there, and he met our family. And it was just awkward. Like, we didn't know what was going on. And, you know, he meets my dad. He's like, "Well, what's your name?" He goes, "My name's Dan." "Well, Dan, where do you go to church?" I wondered if he'd tell the truth, because we didn't grow up going to church. Like, it wasn't just something that we did. I mean, in our house, weekends were not for worship services. They were for parties in the backyard. I mean, I fell asleep most Saturday nights to hearing people like having keg parties and Steely Dan and just laughing the night along. Like, that's just what we did. Like, people ask me what church I grew up in. I tell them First Church of Budweiser. But here's my dad standing at a church claiming, you know, that he goes to this church in another little town. I still remember the end of the service. Back, it's kind of old school. This preacher got up at the end of the night and he said, "Well, we have visitors today. You know, we've got, you know, such and such family." It was my stepdad. "We got the McGrew family with us here today. You know, you all stand up." And my dad, we all kind of stood up so awkwardly. And he goes, he goes to such church and they're visiting us today. You know, "Well, Dan, would you like to close us out in prayer?" I'm like, "Oh, we're going to get struck by lightning." You have no idea what you're asking right now. Like, my dad to close us out in prayer? But he did. He prayed, and I don't remember what he prayed, but I just remember thinking, this is crazy. And then some people invited us over to their house that night. We had some homemade ice cream. We built some friendships, and life kind of moved on. It wasn't too long after that. I remember it was a summer afternoon, and I was home, and my mom yelled, "There's a fire." And I don't exactly know how the flames broke out. I think it was probably my fault, but the whole woods caught on fire, enough that the leaves were burning over. This grass fire had spread. It had caught my brother's 55 Chevy on fire. The tires were burning, and I ran out with the hose. My mom was yelling, and I would put the fire out. And the hose is, man, I don't know if it was 200 feet or 200 yards, but it was just too short, I can tell you that. I couldn't put it out. And we don't know what's going to happen because, like, it's spreading all over our property. And at this moment, like, I know I can see it's moving towards my dad's buildings, and I'm trying to stop it with a rake. I'm doing everything I can as a kid to put this fire out, and I just can't do it. We're in trouble, man. We're about to lose not just a building, but like our whole family's future. I mean, we're dirt poor. We don't have insurance or any of that stuff. And all my dad's construction tools are about to burn down. He was building a house not too far away. That's what he did back then. And I remember my mom, she had an idea. She had met somebody at that ice cream social, a little ice cream gathering. Her name was Vicky. And she knew that Vicky lived just up the road. And this is well before cell phones or pagers. I mean, you can tell by the gray in my beard. This is going back a time. And she didn't know what to do, so she called Vicky, the lady from that church that we had ice cream with. She said, Vicky, I just got to tell you, we got trouble right now. Our property's on fire. Could you drive down? My husband's building a house just a few miles down from you. Could you get in your car? Could you drive down and tell him we need him at home right now, that our house and our buildings are about to burn down? And she did. Before she did, she made one phone call. And then she got in her car and she drove down and she said, hey, Mr. Dan, your property's on fire. Everything's burning down. Your family needs you right now. And he looked at his construction crew and he said, guys, I've got to go. Our house is on fire. He says, you all, we're done working for the day. And every one of those guys, they packed up their tools and they went home and they left him. I remember my dad, he had to load up his tools in the vehicle because, I mean, what if they get stolen? He'd lose his whole livelihood. So by the time he could cram everything into this van, into the trailer they had, and race home, what was only about like 10 miles to get to our house. By the time he got to our house, he couldn't get in the driveway. We lived way out in the country. There's little winding roads. He couldn't even get in our driveway. It was completely clogged by cars everywhere. Couldn't even pull in. And he finally jumps out of his van. He comes running up the driveway. And he sees my mom sitting there. And she's just stirring a pitcher of lemonade. Because before Vicky went to go tell my dad, she made one call. She called the church. And on that day, farmers, rural people who'd only met my family one time showed up with shovels and rakes, and they put the fire out. See, they fought that fire like their own building was burning. They saved the shop, but they saved my family's future. And they destroyed every assumption I had about what the building with the steeple actually was. It wasn't a social club. It wasn't a performance. It was a rescue station. I tell our team at CIY, we want to be the bridesmaid, never the bride. Our job isn't to be the center of attention. Our job is to make the church look good. As students go home from our events more in love with their local church than when they arrived, we have done our job. I know the critics are loud. They always have been. Church attendance is down, they'll tell you. I mean, y'all, we've been living in this way for millennia here, where they try to tell, Elijah, you're the only one. And God says, Elijah, it's not true. There are thousands who haven't bowed the knee. Or maybe it's when they're going to take the land and they were told the giants are too big, it can't be done. Or even like when the disciples locked themselves away for fear after Jesus died. Like, we live in a culture where they've always been trying to tell us that we're alone and we're isolated and we can't do it. But I want to tell you, man, the church is alive and well and thriving. That more Gen Zers and Gen Alpha go to church every day than boomers and Xers. And what you don't see is that, like, there's beauty happening. And it's not just like in church growth. I mean, I think it's happening in individuals as well. Mayo Clinic calls it the religious factor. Do you know that people who attend church regularly live almost 7 years longer than those who don't? Do you know that churchgoers are 33% less likely to experience clinical depression? On average, they give 4 times more to charity than non-attendees. They're nearly twice as likely to volunteers. Robert Putnam, he wrote in the book Bowling Alone that we're more connected and lonelier than any generation before us. 1 in 5 people suffer from chronic loneliness. Most men in their 40s don't even have friends. And yet the church remains the largest, most distributed social safety net in human history. It provides social capital that keeps communities from coming apart at the seams. So here's the question I want you to wrestle with. If your church disappeared from your neighborhood tomorrow, would anyone notice? Not your members, your neighborhood. Has the gospel come to your community where your church is located? The people who've never even walked through your doors, would the absence of your church leave a hole? Or would someone just turn it into Spirit Halloween store in September? The church that shows up with shovels and hoses when the grass is on fire, that church cannot be ignored. That church cannot be replaced. That church is worth building your life and your neighborhood around. And that's the only church I'm interested in talking about. Hey, welcome to The Current. I'm joined today by co-host, producer, Eric Epperson. Eric, I think you're going to introduce our guest today.
I am, and it's truly my pleasure to introduce our guest and a longtime friend of ours. But our guest today, we were just talking a few months before we jumped on Mike about when he started his current role at the age of 31 years old, stepping into one of the more difficult situations I can think about a young pastor stepping into, following someone who had been there for a long time, actually only met that pastor, that former lead pastor one time, but thanks to a unanimous eldership vote, our friend Aaron stepped in and took the lead of Traders Point Christian Church outside of Indianapolis, or in Indianapolis and beyond. But he's been there for near almost 20 years, and over that time, the church has grown from about 1,500 people to over 10,000 across this. I might be outdated information. We can get the confirmation in a second. Across 4 campuses,
it's outdated.
over the course of
what
all those
now?
years. Yeah, what is it?
We're 15,000.
15,000.
Okay.
How many campuses?
6, soon to be 7.
Yeah, this is great.
Goodness.
This is cool because Aaron gets to do his own intro. Patient husband and father, a really good friend of ours, and he's also on the board at Orchard Group, and we're grateful for his time with us today. Jayson, please welcome a Joplin native.
He is, man.
So
Aaron, glad
Aaron,
you're here. Joplin still produces. Come on now.
Good to have you with us, man.
Give it up for J-Town, man.
Come on.
That's right.
Hey, before we get into this, we got a little tradition. We like to give a gift right out of the gate. And so I got 2 things I want to give you. One is that every guest gets a drop point knife. And this is a custom made by Rick Bayless. We love it. And part of it is, I think for me, is that I know that a knife is a tool, and it does real work, no doubt. But earlier on, I opened up just about the role that tools played in my own faith journey when people showed up at my house with shovels and rakes to put out a fire when my house was, our whole life, our world was burning down. And just knowing that a reflex in a leader, a reflex in a church to be responsive requires a willingness sometimes to cut away, using the knife illustration, things that don't necessarily matter, like protecting the institution instead of serving the mission. And so this knife is just meant to be a reminder to you, man, what needs to be cut away. So we'll be mailing it to you. Don't worry about that. The other thing I want to give you is, and this is kind of connects, so keep an eye out. You get a knife in the mail. Don't let someone of your staff take it from you. The other thing is a hat from a good friend of ours at Remedy Provisions. Nate Carnes owns this. We'll mail this with a knife as well. He started this company a while back. It's a rainbow trout flag on the front, and that's near and dear to me. The whole thing for Nate and Remedy Provisions is he says, man, it's good for what ails you. And in that, he's really talking about the idea of time in the outdoors, time in the water, time in creation, the actual remedy when the weight of leading gets heavy. For me personally, that's fly fishing. I mean, that is, I'm a bow hunter, an avid bow hunter. So when I get 20 feet off the ground in a summit stand and I'm just sitting there, and honestly, it's not about the hunt, it's about the pursuit of the Father. And just love the whole core of archery in that whole world. But we're going to give you a Remedy Provisions hat just because we think that for leadership, reading the current is kind of like what you do when you're fly fishing. You got to read the current. For me, that's where I get still. That's where God has shown me His grace and His nature. But it makes me want to ask you this question. Outside of your faith and family, where's your rhythm? Where's your river? 20 years of carrying what you're carrying. What's the remedy, for you when you think about, the good that ails you? What is it in your life? Where do you go?
Well, you just mentioned a couple of things really near and dear to my heart. I like anything sharp, like a knife. So thank you guys for that. That's amazing.
Have you seen a Rick Bayless knife before?
I have.
Okay.
And Rick and I go way back.
I knew
'cause
that. I was trying to say,
good
yeah.
friends with his son. So I remember when Rick started picking that stuff up. So I do not have a Rick Bayless knife.
You're about to
I've
get
seen
one.
them. So I'm about to get one. Feel very honored. And then probably about 10 years ago, I picked up fly fishing, just going out to the Refuge Foundation every year in Montana. So Brian Carpenter gave me my own fly rod, and I have a 1.5 acre pond in my backyard that I stocked about 10 years ago. So I've got some pretty big largemouth bass in it. And so I started fishing largemouth bass with a fly rod.
Okay. Wait, do you know what you're throwing on the fly rod?
No idea.
Okay. I'm probably
have
4 or
no
5
idea.
weight. It's probably 4 or 5 weight is what I'm guessing. But man, that's fun. That's fun. Well, we love that. It's just something we want to know. We think that allowing leaders to speak to, and I know I'm gonna bait you for one more, and maybe we'll get into that later on. If I remember right, you also get out some of your energy. You still doing a little jujitsu? Is that over?
No. I'm just getting started, man. I had class this morning, so I'm doing jujitsu. I'm about 14 months into my jujitsu journey, and I'm going about a minimum of 3 times a week, maximum of 5 or 6.
Okay.
And that is super helpful. There's so many lessons. Honestly, the 2 guys that talked me into doing it, not to like name drop, I was just with them when I first started it, was Matt Chandler and Craig Rochelle.
Yeah. Okay.
And Craig Rochelle started when he was 53, and he's a purple belt now. And Matt Chandler started a couple years ago. He's a blue belt. And both those guys said, stick with it. And there's so many lessons from it. But the biggest one that I would give you guys is it's taught me how to stay calm under pressure.
Absolutely.
Because that's exactly what happens in jiu-jitsu. Well, yeah, Jason, you've done
I did it for about a year. I can't do it now because I broke my neck, but I still remember.
Not doing jiu-jitsu.
Not doing jiu-jitsu, but it just cut me off. No more submissions around the neck. But you're right. And what you sometimes learn is that strength is not always the answer. Sometimes just patience.
Yeah, most of the time it's not.
It's
and
just like
technique, and it's wearing somebody down.
Yeah.
But when you got somebody, my jiu-jitsu instructor says that it's playing chess with your body with dire consequences. And so,
gosh,
that's a great line. You've got somebody that's on top of you, and they're trying to choke you, and all this pressure is on. And man, there's so many times, and as you guys know, like in leadership ministry, you've got a crisis, you've got a problem, you've got an issue, and it feels intense. Like the weight of leadership is almost suffocating. And it's taught me how to stay calm in the midst of that. So I fall back on some of those lessons that I've learned on the mat.
So what happened today? What was this morning like?
Oh, dude, today I submitted somebody today, which is awesome. Because as a white belt, you don't get to do that very often. And then there's a guy that weighs he's a good friend of mine. He weighs about 50 pounds heavier than me. He's not been doing jiu-jitsu as long, but he's super athletic. And today I went toe to toe with him. Like he couldn't get me, and I had him. I was on top for a while. Had him pinned for a while. So those little small wins. If you've ever done jiu-jitsu, you learn to grab a hold of those things.
Well,
it's like everybody in the gym is getting better as you're getting better. So it feels like like when you go to the lazy river at the water park and you're drifting towards getting better, but everybody's still drifting further ahead of you. Yeah. So sometimes you wonder am I really improving? And then you get a new guy that comes into the gym and you destroy him. And then you realize, okay, I'm getting better.
Well, you're at 2 years out from the badge of honor. I'm looking to see any cauliflower ear. I don't see any yet, but it's coming, I'm sure. You'll get there eventually.
Right
you guys see it's coming in. There it is. I know what to look for. Well, let's jump in here. I'm grateful for this time. This will be a fun conversation. So I told people earlier in the podcast that I was introduced to Jesus, and honestly, I fell in love with the church long before I knew Jesus was. It was a small church, I can't imagine what you're navigating with 15,000 people. That's an insane concept against that many different campuses. And I'm sure that at times you can get this place where if you're not careful, and I'm not even saying from your seat, just from the organizational seat, the people who keep this thing running, the machine can start protecting itself instead of showing up. And I know in my world, what changed it for me is our property was all burning down. I told the story before you came on. And in that moment, people abandoned everything. How do you maintain a culture where the church doesn't become so big, so mechanical, so large that you miss the ability to show up for individual families? How do you hold that tension?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, I think it always goes back to the goal for us is not growth. We don't ever make that the goal. It's the byproduct of health and following the lead of the Spirit. And just like, Paul said, I planted the seed, Apollos watered, but God made it grow. And so it is a red flag for us if the conversation starts to drift into how can we make this thing grow, instead of how can we faithfully plant and water and prepare the soil, so to speak, for God to do what only He can. And so we're really focusing on healthy. And I've been a part of some really toxic and unhealthy small churches, and I've seen some really unhealthy and toxic big churches. Size is not spiritual, whether it's small or big. And you can be unhealthy and small. You can be unhealthy and big. So I think we have a tendency to, be highly suspicious of anything big, because it does require systems and processes. And systems and processes can be used by an insecure, narcissistic leader, and all of a sudden people start to feel like cogs in the machine. Maybe you've kind of heard that kind of terminology. Or if you're a healthy leader and it's growth that is being led by the Spirit, systems and process is actually there to care for the people and to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks.
That's good.
And so we try to set up systems and processes to make sure that people are cared for. And I try to just slow way down. And like the bigger we get, the more out of the weeds I force myself to be. And I'm trying to even before this podcast, I'm just roaming the hallways. I've got no meeting to go to. I've got no agenda. I'm just, who am I going to bump into? And let me be a real person. And let me not ask about their job product or their metric. Let me ask how their family's doing. Let me ask how they're doing. Let me check in with them since we just got done with Easter, and try to set the tone for that, where I'm unhurried. I'm not insecure. I'm not like, we got to hit these marks or these growth things. It's like, that's not up to us. What is up to us is to take seriously the Great Commission and to be really passionate about that and let God only do what He can. And honestly, I'm just as surprised as anybody. I never thought that I would ever lead a church more than 300 people. So to see what's happening here is astounding to me. And I think the bigger that it gets, the more humbled I am by that. And quite honestly, it's sort of like a holy fear of what I've been responsible with stewarding. And I do not want to mess it up or to give the bride of Christ a black eye. And so for me, I don't find myself leaning in and clutching in more. I find myself kind of leaning back as God continues to grow us.
Is that something that for you that happened either organically, or did you have to do it deliberately? Was there a moment where you realized, hey, I'm in this thing now, and I'm starting to see us drift towards safety, towards protecting the brand, instead of clearing the way? And if you think about it, is there a time in your mind, I know when that happened? And then what did you do how did you turn that back? Or has it just always been organically, this is who we are?
I honestly think that, I don't know. I mean, I would say that Traders Point had about 1,500 in attendance on the weekends when I got here, but was probably operating more like a church of 300 at the time. And so I think when I first got here, not only did I have to grow, because I'd never led a church of anything bigger than 200. I'd been on staff at a church of 1,200, but I'd never led a church more than 200. So I had to figure out what it was what my leadership led. And I think I read that book, from Sam Chan, Leadership Pain, where he was like, I forget how he phrased it. Your leadership lid is directly connected to your threshold for pain. And most of the time, leaders don't like pain, so we sort of tap out. And my
good line.
I've got this sort of gifting where I feel very ambitious. I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm an achiever, and I realized that needed to be redeemed so that it didn't become I'm baptizing my ambition, or I really want my dad's approval. So there's a lot of pastors like that. I didn't get the approval from my parents growing up, so watch me lead and grow this church. And so I did a lot of really hard therapy work, EQ 360s. We've done a lot of really hard work, and even the executive team I have around me, we've got about a decade of experience together.
Makes a difference.
And so it makes a huge difference. And we've been through battles and we've got scars to show it. And there isn't anything that they can't confront me on. They do it all the time. They hold me accountable. They ask me hard questions. Hey, what's your motivation behind that? Just to keep us honest. And so, and then I also think too, for me, I'm not a micromanager. I'm most definitely, if there is a sin of abdication or delegation, I probably sin more on abdication. I probably give too much away, but I think that's good in many respects. I'm aware of the big things that are happening around here, but I'm only probably weighing in on maybe 20 or 25% of the decisions we make.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to go my way. And in fact, I think the best question that I try to ask, in a meeting is, what do you think? And oftentimes I'll reserve my opinion to be the very last one that's spoken. And then if the team wants to make a decision that I wouldn't personally go with, and it's not violating scripture or ethics or morality or anything like that, it's like, oh, okay, let's go ahead and try that, because it doesn't need to be my way.
No, that's good.
And then I also think one last thing I'd just throw in there. I think all of us have insecurities, and I try to make it to where my insecurities don't cripple me, but I also use my insecurities as a guardrail against that narcissistic monster that's in all of us. And so it's just like, hey, God, I don't know if I can do this. And so actually, would you please take my insecurities and help me to let them not be an inhibitor of my leadership, but also let them be a guardrail so I don't become a monster. And because I don't think that I have all the answers. Like, I honestly am like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I really got into this not because I wanted to grow a large organization, but because I wanted to teach and preach the Bible. And so that's my lane. And I feel like most of the time when people come up to me, I'll just do like an expositional sermon through 15 verses in Mark, and people will come up and say, thanks for your leadership. And I'm like, I don't know what I just led. I just taught you the Bible. But I think people pick up on that. They can tell that you're leading through preaching.
My mind immediately goes to, it sounds like something you've been working on. Simon Sinek talks about leaders need to be the last to speak, because you can always say what you originally thought, but you allow other people to speak into it. Sounds like you're doing that. I'm really fascinated by this. You've talked about over the course of these years, you've grown, you've changed. How do you feel like you're working in your sweet spot now? You're actually really doing the thing you set out to do all those years ago, but your church is completely different now. Are you in your sweet spot?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that. It's like I've described it this way before. I know that we share our alma mater in Ozark, and I've often said, if I could get in a DeLorean time machine and go back on the hill and find my 20-year-old Bible college self and say, hey, dude, get in the car. Let me show you what we get to do in 25, however long it's been, 25 years. That kid would lose his freaking mind. Like, what we get to do this?
Yeah.
And I think at times I have to remind myself of that, especially on hard days. It's like, holy cow, I get to do this. Like, this is exceeding beyond. Now here's the thing, man. It's like,
go ahead. What warning would you give him?
Like,
what would you say? Hey, you can see this, but like, dude, be careful.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think where I'm at now, I've had some conversations with some other leaders around my age. Jayson, maybe I even had this conversation with you, where it felt like in my 20s and early 30s, if we're using the analogy of a tachometer in a car, like I'm redlining the engine for very minimal results. And now it feels like I'm not revving the tack as high for twice the results. And
but your torque is higher, I bet.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I even felt that this last week of like, I never want to get into this space where it's like, oh man, it's like, I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I think I know what I'm doing, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then, because I've always said, I don't think that my ability to like preach or even lead is just like this natural thing. I think it's supernatural. I think God granted it to me for a reason. It's a gift to steward. And it's a gift to work on, but it's a gift to steward. And I feel like he could pull it off of me just as easily as he laid it on me. And so I never want to get arrogant and think, oh, I've been around, I've seen everything. Like I can do this with one hand tied behind my back. Like I don't want to rev the tack and overwork and get into an unhealthy space emotionally, physically, spiritually. But I also don't want to become lazy. And I've seen leaders in the second half starts to take their eye off the ball. And that's when all kinds of problems can happen. The organization can begin to slip. Your culture begins to slip. Your mission begins to slip. Your ethics and your morals begin to slip. So just staying attuned and attentive.
That's good.
If I could give my 20-year-old self coaching, and I do this with a lot of like 20-somethings, college students, leadership residents that we have, I just took myself way too seriously in my 20s, and it about killed me. Like I was like, if I don't think I have this thing figured out by 26 or 27, I'm an utter failure. And so I was in a sprint all the time. Like everything had to be a home run. And I think learning to sort of like relax a little bit and trust in the sovereignty of God and take it a day at a time and to develop like healthy rhythms and practices was something that I think that I wish that I could have coached myself on a long time ago.
You think that comes from a place of confidence? I hear you talking about stepping out of the weeds, listening to other people, not feeling you've got to press. Obviously, fly fishing and jiu-jitsu is kind of teaching you that too. Like, is confidence the best word for that? The healthy, holy kind of confidence?
Yeah, maybe some of the confidence of like, and not even know so much confidence in myself, just confidence in the Lord. Like I've been through some battles and some times where I didn't know our way, how we were going to navigate this, and he came through. And so just taking a deep breath and relaxing in that, realizing that I'm not as important as sometimes I think that I am, and it's going to be okay. And let's let God resolve this issue. I will fight your battles for you. Kind of a thing. And then there is something about age, I mean, I think that when I first came to Traders Point, it felt like I was this young son that had to prove myself to the church. And now I feel like a young father. And so it is, when Jayson talked about torque there a minute ago, sometimes like I'll say, I mean, I feel I'm a very, very different leader. I'd like to think I'm a much, much better preacher than what I was when I got here. But sometimes like I don't think that I'm saying anything different, but the congregation's receiving it different because of years of trust that has been banked up and chips that I've got. And in fact, a good portion of the people think that I started the church.
Yeah.
Just because here's a phrase that's been bubbling around in my mind: the dividends of longevity.
No, that's good.
It's like compound interest in your bank account. It's like the same thing is true with your leadership.
Well, I know that, I mean, and I'm not here to talk about us, I want to talk about you, but we've experienced a point where in the last few years, specifically like 4 years, we've doubled as an organization. You've gone through rapid growth. We are growing at stupid paces right now. And man, hyper growth is violent. I don't think people realize that. And it can quickly break systems and it can break people. I think sometimes executives are the first people, and I don't even just mean top level executives. I think just people in leadership, they're terrible admitting when they're drowning. I want to ask you about in your growth trajectory, what's one of those lonely days of leadership over the last 20 days when the moment and the weight of growth made you feel like, okay, it's not that this is unbearable, but if I keep doing it this way, it might be untenable. What did the room feel like? And did you ever get to the point where you're like, man, am I the guy for this? Do I want to keep doing this in this system this way? Do you remember that? Do you have a day you can look back and go, yep, I remember that day? Or season even?
Well, I mean, obviously, COVID was rough for all the reasons that, I mean, I even sometimes kind of hate to talk about COVID because everybody, was really wrestling in various ways through all of that. I think some of it crystallized for me. I think that maybe there's like this blessing and this curse with growth. The blessing is when people stop you. Like I remember Bob Russell telling me when I first got here, he said, it's going to probably take the congregation roughly 5 years for them to begin to see you as their pastor and not Howard. And then he said, it's probably going to take like another 7 to 10 years for the community around the church to start to see you as a pastor in the community. And he goes, but if you can manage to stay and serve for 15 years or longer, the city will start to see you as their pastor, even if they don't attend your church. And I was like, what? And I'm heading into my 19th year, and a lot of what he said is true. Like a very common conversation that I'll have, like if Lindsay and I go on a date and we go on the other side of town, so that way we don't have a whole lot of people recognize us. It's not uncommon to have like a waiter come up and say, hey, are you Aaron Brockett? And I'll be like, yeah. And he says, I don't go to your church, but I listen to you. And there's this blessing of like recognizing there's literally thousands and thousands of people that you're blessing, and people say tremendously kind things to you that you don't deserve. And then the other side of that, with that many thousands of people, even if it's 1% critics, it feels like an army, because it kind of is, because the numbers are so big. And so I think just the number of eyeballs you've got on you. I remember very vividly, if this was maybe right after COVID, a dude coming up to me in the lobby, and he said, hey, I just want you to know that I'm praying for you, because there's a lot of people that would love to see you fall. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, people are rooting for me to fall. And so recognizing that it's almost like the weight of leadership with this many people is like you're carrying 300 pounds of bricks and you're walking across an icy lake. And it's like every step I could slip. And there's something about that sobers you. And then you're like, when I just look at the Bible, the leaders in the Bible, the track record's not good.
No, it's not.
Like only like 20% finish well. That might be even generous. And so how do I slow down to achieve more? And how do I build in authentic relationships? I'm not talking about like one-dimensional accountability partnerships. I'm talking about like genuine friendships with both men in locally, face-to-face, as well as men and pastors nationally that I can have texting relationships or FaceTime conversations with to make sure that my soul is staying healthy. I just think that as the church has grown larger, it comes down to just the number of voices and eyeballs. So every little thing that I say gets scrutinized. It gets praised and shredded at the same time. And I remember coming home to Lindsay one day and I said, today I received several emails from people telling me I'm the greatest thing in the world. And to me, that looks like danger, 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 because that could feed right into my ego and my head and make me do some dumb stuff. And then I also got emails from people, cursing me out. And I was like, who am I? Like, am I that guy or am I that guy? And that could be really I think that's where a lot of leaders lose their minds, because they're just kind of like, I don't know who I am, because I got all these people and all these voices telling me who I am, when really in reality, they're just teeing off on you, trying to regulate their own emotional pain. And so you've got to have some grounding as a leader. You got to constantly be grounded, like every single day, and pray, God, please keep me sober-minded so that I don't slip and mess this up. I would just say that's probably maybe one of the biggest, and there's various seasons of that. You asked for a specific season. I think I go through that season quite regularly. Every time, our church has grown by probably the most percentage growth in the last 18 months that it ever has in its entire 200-year history.
200-year history, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that's got to be sobering too, right? Where it's like, man, you got people, waiters across town going, man, you are amazing. And you're also like, yeah, man, I've been here 20 out of the 200 years. I recognize I'm just stewarding this thing. Like I'm just getting started. Man, it seems like the most helpful email would be like Aaron Brockett. He's okay. Just like right down the middle, right? I was tempted to ask like a big philosophical question, but I'm not going to. I want to get real practical. Like it's an epidemic that guys in middle age don't have friends. It's also harder and harder for leaders to have friends. Like real practically, what do you do to cultivate male relationships in your life other than like, going to the gym and getting, slammed by them and stuff like that? But can you be friends with somebody and be their pastor at the same time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would hope so. I mean, if we couldn't, how hopeless is that? Like, that's tragic. I think that's honestly, I think I heard Ken Idleman say that one time. He's like, everybody talks about the isolating factor of leadership, but it's the leaders who isolate themselves, or they let people isolate them. So it's like you either isolate yourself, or other people will say things to you like, oh, I was going to reach out to you, but I know you're so busy. And I'll immediately cut that off and go, hey, dude, don't just assume that.
Wow.
Like, if everybody thought that, then of course, like, nobody's reaching out to me. So I gotta invest in the right kinds of relationships and friendships. It's honestly not been that difficult for me to. I try to think about friendships in various buckets. So I have fostered, some of my closest friends are pastors who do not live in the same city with me. And that's not to cop out to say that I don't have if in-person friendships. I think you need those too. I think that more pastors are deep friends because all of us are looking for brothers in arms because we recognize the significant pressure that we're under that just nobody else can get. I mean, even my own team and my own elders, they try to relate to me, but they will even say to me, if you were to interview them on this podcast, they would say, we kind of know a little bit of the pressure, the weight that Aaron feels, but we don't fully know. But other pastors know. And so those friendships get fostered. I'm involved in 2 cohorts with pastors, mostly for the friendships. I do a retreat out in Wyoming every year with 25 different pastors. That's an annual thing. It's a non-negotiable for me. But then in person, in my own church, I feel like I need non-ministry Christian men. I say non-ministry, meaning they don't do this vocationally. They're marketplace guys, but they're Christians, and they're in my church that can handle being friends with me, and I'm their pastor. And that's taken some time to develop, but they're there. And then I'm constantly looking for this. So I will oftentimes, when I'm on the weekends, work in the lobbies of various campuses, or I'm down front, if I end up having a conversation with a guy, and it doesn't matter the age, they could be anywhere from 20 to 70 or 75. And if I like the guy, I'll be like, hey man, this has been a really good conversation. I'd love to stay in touch with you. And it actually helped me to memorize your name if you just give me your number. It would be okay if I gave you my number. And a lot of times they're really shocked by that, but we'll give each other our numbers like right there. And then I'll write his name down in a note file under, or however I've got it, like male friendships or whatever. And I'll write his name down, a little brief description so I remember him. I'll text him later that night to say, hey, like I meant it. It was really good to talk to you. Here's my number. Reach out to me for anything.
That's good.
And then I get text messages from dudes at every campus of our church all the time. Like even this last Easter, as soon as I get done with my sermon, guys are texting me, hey, that was a great message. But then what I'll do, this is the last little thing I'll say here on this, is that let's just say I get an evening free. My wife and kids aren't at the house or whatever. I'm going to sit by a fire pit, and I'll maybe text a dozen of them off that list. Hey man, I'm going to be at my fire pit tonight at 7:00. I'll be out there for 2 hours. If you want to come over and hang, feel free. Here's my address. And man, I don't know that I've ever had anybody turn me down. They show up. They can't believe I gave them my address. They just walk around back. They don't necessarily know each other. They sit around my fire pit. And then I'll say, hey guys, for the next 2 hours, I want to guide our conversation. Thanks so much for coming over. The reason why I invited you over is because I just really enjoyed talking to you and like to get a chance to invest in each other a little bit. So let me just ask you 2 questions. Number 1, what are you really excited about right now? And what's been your greatest struggle in the last year? I'll go first. And I get as transparent as I can. And it sets the stage for the rest of them. And they feel a connection to me. And then they end up doing it themselves. They'll text me pictures of their fire pit conversations. I think I don't do this for this reason, but I think a byproduct of this is the mega church guy, the perception that he's isolated and you can never reach out to him. Those dudes become ambassadors of a very different narrative. And they start saying, no, dude, like the guy gave me his number, invited me over to his house, and he's a real dude. That spreads just like misinformation spreads. And I think it begins to foster and develop your culture, and it begins to show people. I've actually told our whole church I've done that, and I've shown them pictures of it. And I think it gives guys permission to foster friendships.
Yeah, love that.
So, I love that, Aaron. I think even my own life, I know how much the church meant when it showed up for me in a time when my life was on fire. I love the fact you're literally setting, around a fire, controlled fire, of course, in your situation, not like what my situation was, in engaging in deep conversations. I know you can't put every pastor, in the nation around your fire pit today, but you've watched the American church inside of a high growth context for nearly 2 decades. What's coming in the next 5 years? Not the opportunity. I want to know the specific threat you see coming that you don't think your peers are taking seriously enough right now. And what does a leader need to be doing now to get ready for it? Is there anything? I know Solomon says, we know. I understand they say there's nothing new under the sun, but I do think that sometimes our awareness of what's going on, we can get so caught in a rhythm of what we do. What do you see coming that you don't feel like your peers are talking about?
Well, I mean, I think that some of my peers see it. Some are maybe not as much, and maybe some are slow to see it. I think I was even somewhat slow to see it. COVID, I think, really opened my eyes to a few things. I think you're right. There's nothing new under the sun. Same demons, different days. The same spirit of the Antichrist is still at work. Satan counterfeits what God creates. He's been doing that since the beginning of time. I will say that I do think that the ministry world that you and I were brought up in and were trained for ministry in has radically shifted. And there are some guys that need to change the play. And they either haven't, or maybe they've suspected that the same play isn't working. Like if you keep running it up the middle and you keep getting plowed by, the defensive lineman, you need to figure out another play. So I think that we shifted from a culture that was, even like when I first got to traders, like the whole conversation was around the new atheists. We just thought the new atheists were going to take the church down, Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and they were going to outlogic us. And, it was all apologetics. And well, that utterly failed. Like it fell in its face. I actually don't see as many proclaimed atheist nowadays, or even that whole logic. It was almost as if secular progressivism was like, we're the smart ones, you're the dumb ones, we're going to out argue and out debate you, and you're going to lose, and you're going to look like failures, and you're going to lose your faith. And it didn't work. So now I think what I feel like is coming, this is just my seat and my perspective, the biggest thing that I'm leery of and honestly quite concerned by is that secular progressivism and Satan isn't taking the affront of trying to get people to disbelieve. What he's trying to do is he's trying to sync up secular progressivism ideology with elements of Christianity and morph it into something that leads to heresy. And I don't know that enough, because of the 1980s era where the church got like overly political in unhealthy ways, because of maybe 1990s and early 2000 culture war issues that became maybe arguments about secondary things and maybe kind of missed the heart of like helping non-believers see that Jesus really did love them and care for them. Out of an overcorrection to not repeat some of those same mistakes, I think a lot of times as pastors, we try to just be nuanced and we say, well, we got to just pastor all people, and we don't get clear. And I think clarity is kindness. I think the book of Acts is bold, but it's also brokenhearted. And our people are starving for clarity from their pastors. And I think that's part of the reason why the whole podcasting world has exploded, because the pulpits got real fuzzy on things and people were just looking for truth. And so I think that what we've got to recognize as pastors is that we are shepherds, and we've got to care for our flock, and they are being discipled by algorithms and all kinds of distortions of the truth and confusion, and they need some clarity. That doesn't mean that we get abrasive. That doesn't mean we get overly political. That doesn't mean we become, lightning rods for everything, but it does mean that we can't be nuanced on certain things, that we're going to have to provide some clarity about real life implications of what the scriptures teach. And so I just feel like that's probably my biggest thing. Like my all staff talk that I'm getting ready to prepare for next week is to walk our staff through what a logical fallacy is and why people use them all the time to just try to avoid the actual argument. And then what is the difference between sound doctrine and sound orthodoxy and progressive Christianity? What is the difference? And we're just going to walk down through that list to try to arm and equip them. And so, yeah, at least as from my seat, and honestly, I'm not excited about it. I don't like having enemies. I don't like controversy. I don't like any of that. But here's the thing. I'm not even trying to be controversial. I'm just like, at times, just stating what the Bible says, and I'll just get lit up for it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what I signed up for. Like, is to protect the flock, contend for the faith. So I don't know.
Well, if we have people, listeners that want to connect with you, they want to figure out how to hear more of kind of your thoughts in your heart. I think you've got a podcast, right? You're doing, and then have you got any other place where people, if an individual is listening, maybe he's sitting at a deer stand like I would be right now, listening to this with one earbud in, not two. Sometimes it helps me, man, because I think every squirrel's a deer behind me. Or if they're on a road trip, working on a tractor on a car right now, and they want to hear, hey, I want to hear more what that guy has to say. Where do they go?
Spotify's got all of our sermons, and as well as the podcast. The podcast is called the Taking Ground Podcast. Okay. And those are on Spotify. YouTube has the video versions of both as well. So they'd probably be two good places.
Anything you've written out there they can get a hold of?
No, I've not written a book. I've written a lot of forewords. I've always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. So.
Well, you do enough of those forwards, though, it becomes a book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a choose your own adventure kind of thing.
All right, here's our last question we love to ask, and it doesn't have to be serious. It can be if you want it to be. But my question here is, if you open up your Spotify, what are you listening to right now? Eric will name his, and I'll name mine. What are you listening to? What's your guilty pleasure? It might be a podcast. I don't know, man. What are you listening to right now?
Podcasts. I probably listen to Joe Rogan, and then there's another podcast called the All In Podcast, which is 4 CEOs out of Silicon Valley. It's interesting just listen to their perspective. Music, it depends on if I'm working out or if I'm just driving in the truck. Honestly, like a little Morgan Wallen or a little Ella Langley.
All right.
Eric, I was going to say, what's the workout music though? Like, are we going back to like?
That's usually like 90s, like alternative, heavy metal stuff.
Yeah. What do you listen to?
Korn, man, I just put. Well, first of all, I've got teen girls in the house, so we listen to a lot of Benson Boone and Taylor Swift. Sure. Stephen Wilson Jr. is a guy, a friend of mine turned me on to, and so I like him quite a bit.
Mine, on the way into the truck, I was listening to Uncle Lucius, "Keep the Wolves Away." It's worth a listen, man. Uncle Lucius.
Interesting.
Keep the wolves away. I've been getting into that. Okay. Well, man, we are grateful for the conversation, man, and honestly, just grateful for the leadership you're giving the kingdom. Thanks for taking time. We will get you a knife and a hat in the mail here pretty soon. You can enjoy getting a Rick Bayless blade. But honestly, Aaron, just really grateful for just the way you're leading that church, and just to our young leaders, whether it's in ministry or you're working in business. There are principles here that Aaron's given us, I think, are good for all of our hearts to hold on to. Man, just grateful for the time, grateful for the investment.
Yeah, always a pleasure, man.
Well, I'm grateful for both you guys. Just our friendships goes back a long time. And Jayson, I don't know if I've ever said this to you ever, and I should say it now publicly. My first exposure to you, it was when I was a Bible college student, and I think because you're a few years older than me, and you came back to teach at something. I don't know what it was. It was like Deeper Life or something. And dude, you were maybe one of the first young fireball preachers I'd ever heard. Like, you preached with such passion that it kind of set me back. And I'd like to think there's a little Jason French in me every time I get up to preach.
Well, man.
So
I
appreciate
let's
it,
bond some more over some fly fishing and some bow hunting, man. I saw one of your reels. You do shoot a little archery, I saw.
I just picked it up. So I just got. So actually, somebody gave me a compound bow. I need to go get fitted for one.
What are you shooting?
So they gave one to me. A Hoyt.
Oh, I like a good Hoyt. I just switched from Hoyt to Bear, but I'm thinking about. I just don't want to do. I want to do Matthews, but then so many people have Matthews that it's kind of like I don't want to do Matthews, but I know it's a superior bow at a heart level. I know it. I just know it.
Yeah.
Joe's looking at me right now. He's one of our producers. He's like, yeah, it is.
Listen to your heart.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Aaron.
I will say, like, I appreciate. I like being able to go out because I can shoot guns in my backyard because I've got enough acreage for it. But if I'm looking to unwind, the sound of like loud gunfire doesn't really settle me a whole lot. But the compound bow, dude, you still get to pull the trigger.
Yep. It's
all super quiet. Man, like a Sunday afternoon after preaching, like it's a great way to unwind and just focus. And I'm really loving it.
Oh man, just like, I mean, sometimes I'm sore after a good shooting session, like what it does to you physically, the attention to detail, the fine-tuning of muscles, like all of that in archery, especially some of those longer shots that get out there, they're difficult. So, well, next time I see you, we'll have to talk archery a little bit, jiu-jitsu, all things fly fishing.
We'll do it.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate you, man.
Man, good stuff.
Yeah.
I was I don't know if surprised is the right word, but I certainly didn't expect the conversation to go that way. Like, I think I was, and maybe this is ignorance, thinking there would be a lot more strategy and systems, and it's just really refreshing to hear, man, get out of the way and get around the fire pit. And that's like ministry can look like that.
I think what hit me was it wasn't a leader who leads by sound bites.
Sure.
And I mean that in a really positive way. It flowed from him really organically.
Yeah.
Just talking about he's getting around, he's walking the hallways, he's present with people. And honestly, I love the fact that, so many times we look at leaders around us, and I think of two things with this, Eric. One is the fact that he says he's meeting people, he's given their number, they're surprised by it.
Yeah.
And I think that's not an indictment on Aaron. It's an indictment on leaders in general.
Yeah, sure.
I think leaders before us have given this air of inapproachability that, we are, sequestered from the common folk type thing. And that's filtered into our churches. It's filtered into our businesses. And I love the refreshing spirit of a guy that says, no, here's my home address. Here's my cell phone. I'd love to get together with you. And I just want to start with two questions. And I'm going to facilitate the conversation, but I'll go first. I love that.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah. And I think that'd be a temptation, right, of any context or any size. You can insulate you can find ways to be busy as a leader of a church of 100 or 10,000. Right? If you don't set your priorities straight. I do think there's a bit of I pressed it a little bit. There is a confidence. I think there's a holy confidence in the ability that I would admire and respect to say, I don't have to have the last word. I don't have to be right. I don't have to have it my way. I'm going to hire good people and get out of the way and let them do their work. I thought was really encouraging.
I think the final thing that caught me before we wrap up and kind of stepping out of the stream here for me is, sometimes, the old school rationale of leadership is, well, you can't be friends with the people you lead.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't, and that attitude is not embodied in Jesus at all. It's not embodied even when you look at David in the Old Testament and his mighty men. That a lot of times the people that you see that leaders are engaging with, they are friendships. And I'm kind of curious where this disconnected form of leadership came from that said, hey man, I actually can be close to the people that I lead. I can have a relationship with them. And I appreciate people like Aaron. He reminds me a lot of the people that showed up at my house when the house was on fire.
Sure.
Men that show up that isn't just a strategy, it's a reflex born out of the core of who they are. It doesn't come from a sermon series. It comes from the culture of how he's built his life over years of choosing to show up. At times even it cost you something. Like for him, it could have been a night off. And I know for me, being an introvert, sometimes I get a night off. The last thing I want to do is call 12 guys to show up. But I love that Aaron is building that culture over the last 20 years. I think most leaders are in the current of institutional pressure more than they're living in the current of actually getting to know the people that they're surrounded by. And I think Aaron's learned to read that culture that he's standing in and not to get swept away by it. And I respect that. So, yeah.
Okay, what's the challenge? What's the task?
Yeah, I'm actually tweaking a little bit as I'm sitting here and just listening to Aaron. So here's a task I would give you this week as a leader. I'm going to encourage you to audit your individual leadership reflexes. I think you should go to some of the top people in your organization and the people that you're invested in, and ask the simple question. If you can ask them, how much are you investing in them? How much, I actually know leaders that don't even know the names of the children of the people in their organization. And I want to ask you to give yourself a test. Can you name the kids of everybody in your team? Do you know anything about who their wives are, who their spouses are, if they're married, if they're not married, if they're single? When's the last time that you invited people into your personal space and built a fire in your backyard to have a deep conversation? And I would encourage you this week to maybe reach out to some people either in your team, maybe they are customers you work with, clients you work with, people in your church, people that attend your church, and say, hey man, there's going to be a time in my backyard, and I want to invite you into my space, and I want to offer two points of conversation. We can learn from Aaron. Hey, what's been one of the greatest successes in your life or of this year? And then what's the thing you're struggling with the most? And then I would encourage you for you to lead the way. And let's see what it'd be like if we as leaders start building fire pits for conversations more than we build strategies to impress people that don't really even care about it. So
yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves we're all junior high kids in some level where it's like inviting people is really scary, but I'm just a big believer in everybody's waiting on an invitation.
Oh,
so
man,
how do
Eric, that's my story. It's the story to get invited over to an ice cream social that changes the whole trajectory of my family.
Yep.
Like do you invite people into your home, or do you just invite them to your company, or do you just invite them to your church? And I know it was the invitation into a home that caused my dad to break every bottle of alcohol and never go back. He's an elder in his church. And now the generational impact between me and my children and what will be my grandchildren, because somebody said, hey, come to our home for ice cream. Yeah.
The Apostle Paul wrote, right? We were honored to not only share the gospel with you, but our lives as well. And that really becomes what I think ministry is. And so I like this challenge. I think it's a great one. I think it's another great opportunity to, if you were listening and you were to do that, to reach out to Jayson or I on Instagram to snap a picture of those 12 guys or 12 gals around your fire pit or wherever you gather,
get the principle.
by all means, gather and create space for conversation and connection. We do want to connect with you, and one of the ways that we want to do that is to be able to offer a gift to you. So we're going to give away one of those Rick Bayless knives that we mentioned here. Jayson, how can people find out a way that they could potentially be in the drawing for that knife?
Yeah, if you'll go into the show notes, there'll be a pointer there that says giveaway. You can click that. We'll also have some links to Remedy Provisions. Nate's got a great company there, as well as maybe some other links on Spotify to Aaron and his material. And we would love it if you guys would like and subscribe and maybe share this with a leader, somebody you know that could be encouraged either by Aaron's words or even by the challenge we offered at the end. And honestly, grateful to have you all, to have you listening to us. If you're like me, you're probably on a tractor somewhere, or you're maybe working in your backyard. No matter where you are, man, may God shape and move in your heart in the way that you lead others. Eric, closing word?
You said it well.
Thanks, man.
We'll see you in The Current.
See you.
The Current with Jayson French is executive produced by Eric Epperson, co-produced by Lauren Bryan, with sound and editing by Joseph Jackson. Special shout-outs, as always, to Terry Omart. We'd like to thank today's guest, Aaron Brockett, and our host, Jayson French, and most of all, you, the listener. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Contacts, links, and contact information can be found in the show notes. New episodes drop each month. Thanks for listening, and stay in the current.